A very good Preakness Thursday. Stats Race Lens users, hi-ho from Pimlico, ready for Preakness, and you better bring your galoshes. Bring your waders. As Ellis suggested a couple of minutes ago, the rain is actually relented here for at least for now. Tomorrow expected pretty much to be rainy all day. Saturday it looks like a crapshoot, and we'll hope for the best. And we're certainly going to handicap for a wet track, or at least a track that'll have moisture in it for Preakness, and for the other spots on the card that we've analyzed with Stats Race Lens. Let's welcome in everybody. And this is a home game for Dan Torshman. Dan, evening.
Hey, how's it going? Great to be back. This is always one of my favorite weeks of the year, and I'm ready to. In spite of the weather, I'm ready for the next couple of days.
Well, happy to also have Ellis on hand. Ellis Starr, Uber Capper, ready for Pimlico's big weekend.
Yeah, I am. It was a lot of fun, a little interesting, handicapping the 28 races, many scheduled for grass, and assuming that except for some of the stakes will be off. No official word, of course, for about Friday and Saturday, but you have to assume. So I took some shots on the races that I felt comfortable enough, and I think it's going to work out just fine.
Well, and I can tell you that yesterday when we all went across the turf course to go to the pavilion on the other side for the Preakness draw, the chance to walk across the grass was really a revelation. The grass course here is always kept very long and lush. And the fact is that the turf was firm going across. And, a lot of times we say, oh, yeah, they're calling it firm, but obviously with all the rain, it has to be yielding. Well, as of last night, I mean, there's been another couple of inches, and we may still get another couple of inches. But as of last night at 5 o'clock for the going over, the turf was honestly firm. And if we think back to last year when, for instance, Cambodia and World Approval, when they won, and they're both going to try to defend, they were calling it, I think they were calling it actually soft, a legitimate soft. Right now, my guess is it would be good to yielding based on the way it was about 24 hours ago right now. So let's hope for the best. I think they'll take the allowances off, but I think there's no reason that any of the turf stakes, even the sprints, and sprints typically dig more divots and dig harder divots because of the way the horses are running than do the route races. But there is also the overwrap about this weekend. It is the kickoff to the match series that'll run from this weekend until September, the revival of the match series that was very popular at the end of the 90s. So I think we're going to get as much turf racing as we'd like. I wouldn't worry about that portion right yet. I think expect the turf stakes to stay on. Let's first of all get a couple of quick sales notes and advertising in. New customers, for those of you that have been considering Stats Race Lens, this is a great opportunity. And the quarterly subscription, you can get 90 days for the price of just a month. And the promo code you use is SRL, Stats Race Lens, M129S. SRL M129S. That's for new customers. If you're an existing customer, the True Odds package, 20% off all cards and subscriptions, and these are good through the end of May, and we'll remind you of those and the codes later on in the show. Let's dive in. We're going to get, of course, to the Preakness, and it might as well start right there. And Ellis, kick off the coverage of a very different kind of a classic race when we think back to Derby and what we were talking about 2 weeks ago.
Well, thanks, Steve. Before we do that, let me just cover, I always like to cover a few new features that came up in the past few weeks. One I'm going to show as we talk about the Preakness. The other two are very interesting for those folks that use some of our other features. I'm just going to go to I might as well go down to the Preakness as an example, but it won't apply. But one of the new features regards geldings. And personally, I'm not someone that really uses much at all, but a lot of people do use the geldings as an example. So I'm just going to go to Quip real quick, and just to show people under the individual research for the trainer or the sire or dam, or for the trainer. So let's assume, of course, he's not, but assume just for a second the Quip is a gelding. And one of the things you can do now, if you want to use trainer statistics or sire or dam statistics, or sire, of course, for their progeny that is a gelding, or dams as well. But mostly, I think trainer would be where it come in handy. The new feature is down here under sex, and you can apply it with other things. But there is your horse is a gelding. Horse is first start says reported as a gelding, and second reported as a gelding. So if you want to track those, you can now track those as well. The other thing, which is one of the best features, and we've been talking about this for a while, and this is in response to user requests, and we always love to hear from everybody out there, and we make lists. We meet about quarterly, our team, to discuss things we might add. But one of the things we just did now, when you go to the date drop-down, you always had all the days that are available in entries and 2 days back, but now you notice this little arrow, and this little arrow now gives you an entire 2 weeks worth of race cards. So particularly those people, existing customers, and those that take advantage of the new promotion to get a 3-month subscription, now you can go back over the last 2 weeks and you can look at any card you want. You can re-handicap it. Of course, with each card, you have access to all the charts on that day and all the videos for that day as well. So there's lots of things you can do to hone your skills with Raceless. That being said, unless you have something else, we'll get into Preakness, Steve.
No, let's get going and talk about this field of 8 that is going to lead with a very prohibitive favorite. And, you know, a lot of the things that we were talking about 2 weeks ago into Preakness, a lot of that goes out the window, of course. Different makeup. Let's see what your thoughts are, Ellis, as we get started.
Couple things I want to point out as we do this, because we know even if the turf has got a very good base, the main track's going to be sloppier money. Now, I'm not going to do this except to show people, but in case you don't know, especially for new users, in addition to the 3 basic templates that are there, we have these pre-included templates with different things that we think are important, and one of them is dirt other than fast. So in this particular case, I'll just use this as an example. It grays out, or you could line through. If you use the customized PPs, you could change it. It is pre-grayed out all the races on a fast track. So, of course, we know that the Derby was on sloppy, so that remains black, as does this race that Lone Sailor won at Saratoga last year, breaking his maiden. And when you scroll down, you have all the races in which horses ran on track other than fast. This might help you this weekend to save time if you want, and that's available already in the program by going to the drop-down for PPs and then situational templates and dirt other than fast. I'm going to go back to my template that I use, which is Equibase template. I just like looking at lifetime PPs. And for those that haven't seen, this is our Equibase featured race of the week, of course. And I was looking for a horse, and I'm going to take a shot with Bravazzo. Now, Justify certainly is a win contender. He's my second win pick. My contenders are going to be Bravazzo, Justify, and Good Magic. With Lone Sailor, going to use him in second and third on exotics. But with Bravazzo, first of all, for those that were paying attention on the weekend of the Risen Star, that was our Equibase weekly featured race. He was my top pick. And the reason was, at the time, he had a pattern that was very nice. He'd been off for 2 months, come back, a prep at Oaklawn. He didn't stay at Oaklawn to run the Rebel. He went to the Risen Star instead. He won by a nose. It was a very nice win, very nice exacta. I can't tell you what happened in the Louisiana Derby. I looked at it, I watched. I have no idea what it was. However, if you consider his Kentucky Derby effort, that was almost back to the level of the allowance race before the Risen Star. And the reason I say this is because when you look at the way he ran the race, I'm not going to bring up the video because it was in the slot, but you look at the way he ran the race, in which he was 4 to 5 wide. At this portion of the race, he went from 11th to 4th, and he just kind of hung, which is what almost everybody did because Good Magic was 2 lengths back the entire length of the stretch. That wasn't a bad effort. Now, you're going to have, of course, from 20 horses, he's only got 7 other horses to deal with in this, and that 3 furlong move was pretty good. If Luis Saez, who's riding him here for the first time, Saez rode, of course, Sporting Chance, and Lucas wasn't real happy with the fact that he whipped him and he got disqualified in the Bluegrass. Luis Saez gets on, so Lucas still has confidence in Saez. If Saez rides Bravazzo off the pace like he did in the Wrist Star, or even from a little farther back, which is going to be much more likely than this 11th in this race, back to where he did here, I think he can run. Now, this race, this effort in the Risen Star was a 1-twin Equibase speed figure. And now when I go to Justify, even though there are certainly other reasons to like him, he's still improving, that was his Kentucky Derby figure. So there's an if in the room, which is if Bravazzo runs back to his Risen Star, and if Justify doesn't improve off the Derby, Bravazzo can win. Is he most probable? No, sure, Justify is more probable. But in terms of value, I'll take 20 to 1 here over 1 to 2 here. I'll certainly use Justify in other wagers. So I think it's interesting. Now, one of the cool things I just did, by the way, for those looking about Bravazzo, first of all, off track. Second, of course, Lucas. A couple of interesting things to show. Kind of, I did it after the fact, just so you know. So with Lucas, I went and looked, and I already set this up as a statistic for the trainer. I have 2 here. One for it was here, Dirt Route Graded Stakes. This is it here for Mr. Lucas. So Wayne Lucas doesn't win a lot of these, of course. 9 wins and 102 starts the last 5 years, Dirt Route Graded Stakes. But he has a 23% ROI, and if you sort, you'll see why. I mean, Bravazzo at 21 to 1, Take Charge Brandy at 60 to 1. Will Take Charge when he won the race at Saratoga at 10 to 1. And of course, Mr. Oxbow. Now, I'm not going to check the pedigree, which I was going to do on Bravazzo, because if I go to Oxbow, I'll find a bunch of things in common. First of all, he's a Calumet homebred, trained by Wayne Lucas. And second of all, he's a son of Awesome Again. And of course, looking at Mr. Bravazzo, he's a son of Awesome Again when it gets there. Second to scroll back to the right horse, there's Awesome Again. So there's a lot of things here that I kind of like about Bravazzo at the price. Now, talking about Justify, don't need to talk him up. I will say one thing about Baffert, which is totally amazing to me when I ran this statistic. This is a statistic of just Dirt Route winner last out. But when you look at Baffert's record winning back-to-back, which it seems to have disappeared. I know I had it. Okay, I'll just go ahead and redo it on the fly. Baffert back-to-back with Dirt Route winners in graded stakes, which is easy to bring up here, who won their last start. I think that was 2 years. I think I set it to 5, but it shouldn't make much of a difference. This is 2 years, but just to show that this is no fluke, because you always want a bigger sample size, I'm just going to change it really quick to 5 years. And this is amazing for horses that get overbet and Baffert and all the success, that he is 58 for 148, almost a 40% win rate in Dirt Route Graded Stakes horses that won their last start, and 70% in the money. So that's the reason why, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to see him win. And last of all, Good Magic ran his eyeballs out last out. He may actually be improving more than Justify, and the reason is because Good Magic, of course, came back and he wasn't ready for his 2018 debut when he was third and badly beaten in the Fountain of Youth. He won the Bluegrass, actually regressed on speed figure, but he won, and then he moved up again. So this is his fourth start of the year, and just to, again, put in comparison, the Derby was Justify's fourth start of the year, his fourth career start as well. And then Lone Sailor, I think he'll pass a lot of horses. He's 15-1. You've got to use him in exotics. But that's where I landed, gentlemen. Bravazzo on top. Going to mess around with Bravazzo, Justify, and Good Magic, and Lone Sailor in second, third in the trifecta.
Yeah. Ellis and I occasionally will land on some of the same horses. There were only 8 we could land on here, and I think for the most part, we agree. Justify, as Ellis pointed out, there's not only the one Bob Baffert angle with winning last time out in a graded stake, but there's an angle that we brought up here a number of times, which is his numbers in graded stakes with shippers, and I mean Mike Smith riding and all. I mean there are so many different angles you can search, and all of them will yield extremely high win and in the money percentages and positive return on investment. So we're just going through one here in particular, but running these searches will all confirm pretty much what we know about Baffert in big spots. Look, Justify is certainly the horse to beat. Here's one with shippers, graded stakes, winner last outs. We added that variable there. 45% win percentage, outrageous. 20 for 29 in the money, and look at that ROI. Look, Justify is the horse to beat. The question marks with him are, 5th race within 90-day span, possible regression off of a career top and best effort, and exerting himself the way he did. Even though, I mean, if you looked at him physically, he looked fine. He looked like he did it with relative ease. But coming out of the race, you look at the fractions. I know he got a little bit of a rest there in the third quarter, after the first half mile. But as fast as he ran early and as fast as he ran late, in a spot like that in the mud, you got to believe that will somehow have to take a toll on him. Now, if it doesn't, then maybe he is just an absolute freak, and there's no sense in trying to beat him. And if that's the case, I may as well throw out the the program for the Belmont as well, for the Belmont Stakes as well, because I mean, you don't know what a horse like that is capable of. He can come back off of this and not be any worse for wear after an effort like that. So, anyhow, he's the horse to beat. I don't know if we want to get into the whole foot condition thing, but essentially, everyone around the horse has kind of put that to bed and said that it's not, that he recovered. He's recovered and he's fine, and it's not going to be an issue. But it certainly doesn't, add to the case for him. So anyhow, again, he's the horse to beat. I picked him on top, and and anyone who's asked me, I've said he's probably going to win. But if you're looking to spice things up in terms of an exacta or a try, Lone Sailor to me is the key horse here. I think that he fits the profile of these Preakness long shots that that make that one run and fly late and hit the board. We've seen them over the past few years: Senior Investment, Cherry Wine, Tale of Verve, Ride on Curlin, or even Mylute, who Tom Amos trained. So just the kind of the horse that'll make one run, and I think have a legitimate shot to run into the money, especially when you look at now. We just had the pace projector up. When you look at how this race might unfold, so Ellis's thoughts, I think, are that Bravazzo will sit off a bit and close potentially. I mean, I think that at least in my opinion, I think his best shot is going. But if it's not Bravazzo, then who is it? Who could potentially go with Justify? Probably none of them, if Justify really wants to put them away. None of them, as you see in the pace projector. But does Quip go? Probably not. Obviously, the horse owned by the same connections. It would really not serve them to have their two horses knocking heads. So that's probably not going to happen. And so, will there be enough pace for a horse like Lone Sailor to, legitimately close into? I think there should be enough. And I have a hard time envisioning a situation where Justify is just loose on the lead. So even if it's Good Magic, maybe putting a little pressure on, maybe that's who it is. But anyhow, Lone Sailor, the other thing is, Ellis mentioned Bravazzo's trip in the Derby. I thought Lone Sailor's was equally atrocious. He was hampered badly on the rail. He didn't just check. I mean, he literally, the horse was taken up and had to just, essentially lose about, 10, 15 lengths as the horse in front of him, Free Drop Billy, was kind of just backing up, and there was no way for Lone Sailor to get out. So if you haven't seen the replay, give it a look here. You can see in the notes here on the chart that it was just an absolute nightmare for him. And so, looking at that, getting the feeling that, he is an improving horse, knowing that this race, at least, recently, has allowed for and has seen, a horse at a big price rally from off the pace. I think we'll see something similar here. So anyhow, Lone Sailor is more of my price horse, and so I think that's why I'm going to probably hammer the exacta there, and then of course Good Magic. I think he's a little more. Again, it's a mystery. I mean, if Bravazzo or Quip happen to go and keep the pace honest, he could sit back, of course. But if they don't, he's going to have to go. Maybe it's a Diamond King that can apply some pressure to Justify. I don't know. I just think Good Magic will have to potentially have a few things go his way. We did do a trainer search here on Chad Brown. You may have kind of heard discussion about this. Obviously this horse coming back in 2 weeks. So how does Chad Brown do when he brings back horses in this kind of time span over the past 5 years? You could actually do, you can define the number of days. So if you wanted to do from 1 day to 14 days, if you want to just look for horses who've come back in under 2 weeks, you could pull those numbers up pretty easily on Stats Racelines, and that one didn't come up there. Let's see. I think some of the qualifiers need to be taken out. I think we've got past 5 years. Let's just go for just 5 years, and then the 14 days. So we'll take out the specific race type. So okay, let's see. I ran it and came up with some different numbers earlier. The numbers and we could mess with it a little bit.
I just changed it to 5 years.
Okay. So there we go. This is it. These were the numbers I was looking for. So yeah, 2 wins in 12 starts. But I mean, the good news is, I mean, as you would expect, 9 of those horses finished in the money. And you have obviously a lot of second place finishes. These were horses that were certainly not put in put into races where they didn't have a race left in them. So I think you could take from that they obviously feel confident enough wheeling the horse back here, and it's not as if I've heard some people suggest that Chad's numbers are atrocious in these sorts of situations. I don't see these numbers as atrocious. I mean, they're not Baffert numbers, but they're not atrocious either. So I think we'll learn a lot about Good Magic. He's been, with the exception of one race, I mean, he's really he's shown up every time, and he seems to get better with every race that he runs. So I'm not ready to count him out entirely. I don't know how pace dynamics play to his advantage in this race. So I'm going to take a stand against, at least in terms of the top spot, and I'll just more or less build my tickets around Justify and Lone Sailor. How about you, Steve? Where are you landing here?
Well, I don't have much like our Derby conversation. I really don't have any out of the box thinking. And my key was Justify over Good Magic. And you come to this, I think the only thing that you are maybe concerned about when it comes to the two obvious horses, Good Magic, there was a real uncertainty from the Chad Brown camp about whether they would continue. And frankly, it wasn't until Brown had surveyed, some people and gotten a read on, where he was with the horse and what they're going to do. They have no other real target, and they're not running at Belmont, and they're only interested at, the second half of the season to get going with the Haskell and Travers. So they're sort of running in here because why not? The horse is sound enough out of Derby, and okay. And I got to tell you, that doesn't. The more I've dealt with that here the last week, and I could tell that he was leaning and was going to probably run, even 4 or 5 days after Derby was over. And when it comes to running in this race, intent and eagerness and resolve counts for something. Tom Amoss is running because he thinks there's something wrong with Justify, and there's no way around that. He saw what happened on Sunday the next morning and basically said, we're going to have to run because this horse may not be 100%. So that's why he's here. You knew that Lucas was coming, and he was coming with everything he could possibly muster. So there's that portion of this. Running back out of Derby is your first priority, and looking at those horses is the first thing you always do. Then from there, start looking at the horses that are jumping in here. And Diamond King, they were inches away from running in the Peter Pan last Saturday, and they had a free pass to run in this race. So now they decide to run. It's Chuck Zachney, it's John Service, it's Len Green that bought into the horse. They had the free pass, so why not? The guy that, to me, and I'm surprised that we haven't reached conversation point, is Tenfold and Steve Asmussen, who was angling to this with Tenfold. And for whatever reason, this horse has gotten less attention than I think he deserves. Quip is another one that you have to say to yourself, Quip shows up here because they weren't ready to run in the Derby. Well, they're that much more ready 14 days later? Okay. He draws the rail. He's going to have to go from the rail. The horse, to me, that is the viable use is Tenfold, because everything about this race is figuring out how to make money, assuming that the favorite, as every other Baffert Derby winner has done, runs well. So I'm going to take you back to a race actually that was run on this date, May 17, 2003. Sunnyside was so overwhelmingly likely to win the Preakness. So you said to yourself, what do you do? How do you make any money here? And it ended up being with Midway Road, who went off at 20-1. Neil Howard and Mr. Farish, Lane's End. And you ended up with a crazy exacta price in a relatively short field. And I think if your question in this race is what do I do to make money, we've been talking about this all week on the radio. It's taking the logical winner and increasing your increment and basically betting what you might normally bet in a larger field, but just upping the ante. And if that means Justify over Tenfold with 2 or 3 horses underneath for a try, whatever, or whether it's a $100 exacta, whatever your budget is. So I think that the only message that I've really got here is, other than what we've already discussed, and everything is true. Lone Sailor very well could get a nice pace to run at in here. Tenfold is a horse that can sit mid-pack and finish. And I think that's I think he gets a nice trip in that regard. But I think, we're all here to make money. And I think you just have to make a determination. If you're convinced that it's a good magic underneath justify, then key off that. That's fine. But I think the key here is to make your commitment and wager. This is not a race that you need any particular clever handicapping opinion. This is a race where your ability to wager cleverly, that's the factor, and that's how you make money here. The one thing I'd love for you to do, Ellis, is to pull up the pace projection and take us around and show everybody where they can get a visualization of where their horse might be at the different points in the race, because to me, that's the last part of this equation.
Here it is. And, of course, as Tenfold, as you have, mentioned, is going to be back. Now, whether this is correct that he doesn't have much of a finish, I'm not sure, because when I saw it on the late pace, he's one of the fastest closers. Quip kind of runs evenly. So of the horses closing the fastest into Justify, who is projected to have a lone lead, if you look at this as far as the late pace figure, as opposed to the projection. Now, this is based on win probability, not on place probability. You've got a really good point there, Steve, because he's going to be closing. He could be the Tail of Verve, the Commanding Curve, those kinds of horses that just counter energy, that are still running when everybody else is kind of getting late.
And if we look, what is interesting on that topic, and the way you phrase that is kind of appropriate for the discussion, because there has been I will, anybody who listens to my show knows very well, I hate that term, that the horses that are jumping into the Preakness that didn't participate in Louisville, you won't hear that term from me. But every new runner that is making a first appearance in the Triple Crown, there's been one after another that has hit the board in that frame. And last year, of course, it was Senior Investment. The year before, it was Cherry Wine. The year before, Taylor Verve and Divining Rod. The year before that, Social Inclusion, although he was actually took plenty of money, etc. I think you mentioned My Loot, Dan, earlier, Amos. There's been a horse like this the last several years that has invaded, and even, like I said, you go back to 2003 and you look at what Midway Road did, and I'll not to redboard something from 15 years ago, but I will say the way that Midway Road kind of got sniffed out was noticing that Will Farish was running a horse in a Triple Crown race. And I started to look at charts. And Farish, I couldn't find any recent races within, a span of a few years where Farish was running in Triple Crown races. So I keep going back, and I keep going back. And I get all the way back to 1972, when he won the Preakness with BBB in a famous race, a wet track Preakness that derailed the Triple Crown. Because Reba Ridge, if it had been a fast track, BBB wouldn't have run, and Reba Ridge would have been a Triple Crown winner, and Meadow Stable would have had back-to-back Triple Crown winners. And Del Carroll's father, Red Carroll, trained BBB, and I called Del Carroll. I said, Del, would Mr. Farish run a horse in the Preakness if it was just and he said, absolutely not. He said if he's running, Neil Howard told him the horse is doing good because that's the way we ran DBB. We knew it was going to be a wet track. We called Mr. Farish and said the horse is doing good, and it's going to be a wet track. And said if you think the horse can run well, run him. And next thing we know, you look down, $120 exacta with a 3-2 funny side. So there is ways to leverage this circumstance of an overwhelmingly likely Preakness winner. And listen, you may not be right. I got no problem with making Bravazzo the price key, or making Sporting Chance a price key, or Lone Sailor. For me, it's going to be tenfold. But that's the mentality you need going into this race to be successful. And we've talked all week, and Ellis, maybe you and Dan could both, because Dan, you talk about money management, and I think this is a worthwhile discussion from the two of you, because I've asked people for 10 days. There's an emotional trigger that's very hard for small to medium players that typically will bet smaller increments. They might be betting 50-cent tries in the Derby, and they might be betting, dollar try keys and so forth, 10-cent supers. But in this circumstance, you may have to call a bet at $10 or $20. You may spend the same amount of money that you spent betting the Derby, but there's an emotional trigger that's very hard for fledgling players to call a $20 exacta or a $10 try key. And you've got to break that barrier in this race. And it could very well change your approach as a player. Ellis, talk to that on the money management side.
Well, yeah, it's really interesting you brought that up. It just depends if you're just having fun or if you really have an opinion, not a strong opinion. So this is going to harken back to the days when I was trying to play professionally, which was over 30 years ago. And Dick Mitchell, my mentor, taught me that when you see a horse at 7, 8, 9 to 1, you think you should be 3 to 1. You have to change your thinking from, oh, the public's right, I must have missed something, to I'm going to crush this. And that is the exact same mentality you just spoke to, is that you need to go ahead and figure out, okay, you're going to take a shot and you're going to call. There was a race at a picture sequence at Golden Gate. I was on another radio show, Sam Spears' show, Sunday morning, and I love the horse, the middle leg. And I went, I told everybody to go, I think it was 3 by 1 by 4. So it was $12 for $1. But I said, don't play it for $1. Play it for $2 or $3 or $4. And the horse in the middle leg was 1 to 5. The pick 3 paid $45, I think. So about 7 to 2 on a ticket that if you played it for $5 would have cost $60. And instead of getting $40 back, you got $200 back on a ticket, but basically you were betting a horse to win. And so I agree 100%. If you do have an opinion in this race, if you think Justify can't possibly lose, whack the exacta. Just go ahead and go for it, or the trifecta.
Dan, how do you coach and encourage players, or give them the motivation or gird their confidence? Because this is all betting from within, as you can term it. This is one of those barriers that will really change people's approach and seriousness about being horse players.
Yeah, no, I think I think you approach this race in the complete opposite manner in which, generally speaking, you approach the Derby, specifically this year, where you had a 20-horse field, and either you didn't like Justify, or you thought that you'd hit 2 or 3 long shots in the try or the super, so you play those smaller increments and you try to catch something big, even if it's at a smaller increment. I think here, given the field size, given the fact that we know a little bit more about each of these horses, you need to you need to go with a confident opinion, determine who your top 2 or 3 horses are, And like Ellis just said, and I think you alluded to, really either hammer that exacta or just key two horses in those top two spots in your try, and bet it for a larger amount. I completely agree. It's funny. I think you would think this is something that you would basically tell to new players. And it might be logical mathematically. Like, you don't want to just hit this for $1. You want to hit this race for $10 or $20, and it would, okay, so yes, that makes sense. I go back and forth with my dad all the time, who's an accountant, and I try to explain the math to him behind why it's a bad idea to bet 50-cent trifecta keys and boxes in 7-horse fields, and it's maddening. But even my dad, who taught me everything, I knew about racing initially, and then really, introduced me to the sport. He's got his habits, and can't bring himself to bet, as he calls it, to lock himself in to just one or two horses in a big race, because it's a big race and you want to come away with a good story and say you had a big. But so instead of making that one large sort of focus bet, you really water down all your bets, and you have less action on. You may cash a ticket, but at the end of the day, the ticket you're cashing might not be as large as the one you could cash if you just go with your opinion and stand behind it 100% with a large bet. So I think it's an interesting discussion to have. It's I think psychologically, people who bet on horses on a regular basis go back and forth on it, and most people who bet on horses will tell you that they're better handicappers or analysts than they are bettors. And it's because we fall into those kinds of traps of betting those really small increments and kind of spreading out our potential for hitting a ticket, as opposed to aggressively trying to hit at a larger dollar amount the horse we like. Yeah.
Let me put it a different way. You got to change your mentality from losing less to winning more. And that's what a lot of people do. And every one of us, including myself, falls into the trap of betting to lose less as opposed to betting to win more.
Right. Yep.
Now, we are always in these get-togethers. We're so focused, of course, on the handicapping portion. But this race, and we spent 40 minutes here, and I think it's very worthwhile, to have spent this 10 minutes plus on this aspect, because one of the shortcomings of the environment in which we all discuss races is all the time spent analyzing and anticipating the outcome, and we don't spend nearly enough time trying to apply the bankroll. And granted, the focus here is using Stats Race Lens to greatest advantage. However, if no matter how much information SRL delivers into your hands, if you don't bet the race right, it hasn't. I mean, it's done what it can, but we have to do as horse players what we need to do to utilize and leverage that information to best advantage. And whether it's the Derby or any other race, and this, if you've got an opinion that Stats Race Lens has put into your hands, if it is, let's say, a horse that you sense is going to clunk up, whether it's an instilled regard at the bottom rung of the Super in the Derby, or there was a lot of people that were keying off of Justify or keying off of Good Magic in Derby, even Audible. People keying horses like that first, second, and third, and building around them. Whatever the information tells you, you have to bet it right, and that is always worthwhile time spent. And it's also, no matter how you do this weekend or any day, going back and looking at how you bet and looking at how you applied the learning, that is how you improve as a player. And that's how you can, not that everybody is going to make money at this game. Some are, people are happy to break even. people who are betting a certain amount are happy to break even because they're getting a rebate, whether it's small or large. There's different ways to have satisfying experiences as a horse player. But what you want to do more than anything is feel smart and feel like you understood what was going to happen. And, sometimes they run for you, sometimes they don't. But you want to understand what you did. And that's how you learn, and that's how you improve. Let's press forward, and we'll talk about the Dixie. And like we said, I don't think we're going to have anything worse than yielding turf in here. Maybe they might call it soft, but it's going to be turf that horses are going to be able to get over comfortably. Going to start with
Okay, well, you're right, and this is one race that I did actually, leave on the grass. It's grade 2 anyway, which if anything else, they're going to leave this one on. And as I told people earlier, the pre-formatted templates, there's one here with turf other than firm. So we're going to look easily, quickly. I set this a lifetime PPs and horses records, and I looked at a number of them, but I'm going to start with who is my top pick, and it's not World Approval. It's going to be Divisadero, and it's based on this effort here last year in the Grade 1 Woodford Reserve Turf Classic. Now, he had been off a month. This time he's back since October. He's changed trainers in the meantime. He's got Jevian Toledo, who's just fine with me. But this course was rated good. We all remember last year. And as you said, Steve, it could have a firm base. But this was a slow as heck race. I mean, just impossibly slow. And yet, he makes up 5 lengths into a slow pace and gets up to win. Don't want to watch the video because we're going to try and get through these races here. But that was a heck of an effort. I'm not as concerned about horse coming back off layoffs in these kinds of races. It just so happens Kelly Rubley, really good here, off 6 months or more, 3 for 13. That's 23%. The last couple of years, actually 1 for 1 on a trainer change and coming off a layoff. So I'm giving Divisadero my top billing. I am also looking at Fire Away again. Same angle. All these races on firm, but look at the 2 races on off turf, yielding. Mile 3/8, horribly slow. Off the pace, got up in time. Johnny V. Manny Franco was given the ride last time in the Dangerous Hour. Rode the horse beautifully. Sugar's going to go back there. That's just fine. I will use World Approval, but I would hope that one of the other 2 win. World Approval certainly last year on the yielding course in the 4-star Dave. I can't find a single excuse for the Kilroe, and I'm just wondering, even though he rebounded here from the Woodford Reserve from the Manhattan to the 4-star Dave, I can't find an excuse. So going back to Johnny V, I'm just hoping he's a little bit off. And then for the bomber here, I'm throwing in the 5 Dr. Mounty to come running on a good track at Saratoga. Nothing, but that wasn't his style. This style right here under Forrest Boyce. There's still no jockeys I can tell you might know, but this horse has a good style to get up and do something here. So my play in the race is Divisadero for a win bet, a smaller win bet on Fire Away, and I'll Dutch, which means find an amount to get an equal amount back. So if one's 4 to 1, one's 6 to 1, I'll bet 20 to win on one, 10 to win on the other. And then I'll play an exacta of Fire Away and Divisadero over Fire Away, Divisadero, Dr. Mounty, and World Approval.
Nice.
Yeah. I'll just hop in and say that I kind of approach this race in a very similar way in terms of looking to beat World Approval, thinking that, perhaps he's a step slower this year. We've only seen him a couple of times, but we shall find out. But nonetheless, I like Ellis as well. I'm going with a horse that is making his first start of the year off a layoff here, and that's going to be Just Howard. One of the searches that I did in the trainer research that you can really sort of customize detail for detail is looking at Grand Motion off of this layoff, because just sort of instinctively, like in my mind, I'm like I feel like Grand Motion does well in this spot. I've seen him bring horses back off of 5, 6, 7 month breaks, and they run well in graded stakes. And so the search that I did in particular is past 5 years, and then I defined 150 to 200 days, which is I think we're about 175 days here with Just Howard, and then looking at turf and then graded stakes. So a very specific search here to see how how motion brings them back, and let's see.
I made a mistake of the years again.
Oh, yeah.
These really need 5-year increments to get a good size. So I
just a larger sample, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, here you can see 10 of the 13 horses have hit the board, and these haven't necessarily all been favorites. I mean, you can see the odds that a lot of these horses have gone off at on the right there, and you see that you're still getting a positive ROI, 77% in the money, and then 2 winners from the 13 starters. And when you're looking at a horse that's 12 to 1 morning line, I'm probably going to bet this race like I'm going to bet the Preakness, and that's I'm going to use Just Howard with world approval and play a large exacta box. And so I think you'll get enough value in the exacta, given the fact that I think Just Howard will be overlooked. Divisadero, even though he's not he's not exactly the he doesn't bring with him the kind of buzz that he might have a year or a year and a half ago. He's still going to take money, and so I think I can make an equal case for both of them. And if I can get a bigger price on Just Howard, who I do like a little bit more, I'm obviously going to go with Just Howard. So that was kind of my play here. I thought Fire Away was potentially interesting. If you are looking to play a try, a horse that could get involved potentially. He was only 4 lengths off of world approval when making his seasonal debut 2 back at Tampa. And so, actually the best, he came back and he ran his last race, that 113 last out, the Equibase speed figure, is a career best for him. The only thing that kind of caught my eye, and this could just be coincidence, but his 3 best races lifetime essentially were all at Aqueduct. So, I don't know. He might just be a notch below. From a pace perspective, I thought this race was potentially interesting in that there aren't any bona fide speed horses. And if you look at the pace projector here on Stats Race Lens, you see that it does indicate that while world approval is on the lead early, you can see that Fire Away is right up there. Middle stages of the race is in the lead, and so that could be an option. You could just send Fire Away and see how long he can go on the front end. And so from a pace perspective, he's intriguing. And like I said, I just get a sneaky feeling that he's going to get involved and will be involved in the try somehow, even though he might, on class be a notch below. So that's all I've got on that one. Steve, what do you think?
I think you've hit all the major highlights here. World approval. I don't think we're going to get a chance to talk about the Gallarette, but you look at Cambodia there and world approval from last year, both trying to defend, and they both have got good shots, but there's a tendency, unless you're talking Tepin, there's a tendency to always try to beat the horses like this, especially particularly the way world approval looked, not just last time, because the win at Tampa, when he didn't run well in the Kilroe, looking back at that race at Tampa, he won, but he didn't win like he was winning the previous year. And so you do have that in the back of your mind. It can be a little. It was easy to, after the fact, to think back and say, you know what, I thought in the Hillsborough that maybe he was just coming off a layoff, but it was a little more apparent that there might have been more to it. But you found the right ones. I mean, I don't think there's anybody else. Divisadero, Kelly Rubley gets the opportunity with him. and I'm sure she's looking to impress. That's a very tough owner, this Gunpowder, the guy that has gotten to be a tough to handle for trainers. I mean, for everything that Buff Bradley did with that horse, to have that horse taken away, that's got to be a pretty demanding client. So I'm sure that Rubley will do everything possible to have Visadero fire. And I like Fire Away too down inside. Shug feels like Shug has been rounding into form, and that everything he did this winter was basically preparations for Keeneland and this time of year. So I think you've zeroed in on everything we need. Let's talk about the Chick Lang and Metol, who I watched this morning. There is a chance that if the track is a complete mess, that he won't run. So keep that in mind.
Well, you just got to look at a horse like this, and average win of 8 lengths. Santana, of course, riding him instead of Pure Shot, who's ridden in all 4 of his races. The pace projector doesn't have him in front a lot, but the true odds is 74%. Not only does he look like he could be the fastest horse early, he's also the fastest horse late. Big late pace number here. And my goal, again, is what we talked about what the Preakness would be, just to find somebody to run with him for the exacta and trifecta. And my play is going to be using the 2 Clouded Judgment, who is on a nice pattern for Lacey Godet. The right horse here. Nice pattern, November to December, scratch, bet, came back, ran lousy, and then boom, love the mud, big 70 to 98 Equibase figure off the pace with Montanez. Everything looks good for this horse. Probably can't win, but 20 to 1, I'll take it. So I'll just be quick here. My play is going to be Metol over Clouded Judgment and exacta, and then in trifecta, I'm going to play Metol with Clouded with the Pure Shot, Curly's. Real quick, the horses here. Metol with Pure Shot, Curly's Rocket, and with Sutash second, and Cloud Judgment third. So 5, 2 exacta, and a 5 with 3, 7, 9 with a 2 trifecta, and that's how I'm playing this 1 to 5 shot.
Yes. Since you mentioned Montanez, might be worth noting he's been riding really well, and he actually, I think he won 2, maybe 3 races today. So he's one to keep an eye on, at least in terms of one that at least is finding his way around the track pretty well here at Pimlico. I ended up looking at this race as one, and this is one that Ellis and I disagree on. We'll see if Metol runs. Even if he goes, though, I just thought this race was loaded with front-end speed and speed that could go with him. You've got Old Time Revival, who we saw in a couple of preps in the lead-up to the Derby. I mean, he can go as fast as he wants. Curly's Rocket's fast as well. So I kind of feel like it sets up for a horse from just off the pace, or a horse that's not going to get caught up in that. And one of the ones that I ended up with was Runaway here, a $325,000 purchase. This horse was third to Bolt Doro. If you look 3 races back there, it wasn't too far off. Prior to that, won the Best Pal. I think he just figures to get a dream pace set up here. I did a little bit of trainer research as well. I really like utilizing it, especially like the one that we did with Baffert is sort of obvious, right? I mean, that his numbers are going to be good. Simon Callahan, a lot of these searches often do yield good numbers. And with Simon Callahan, in particular, the search that we did here was looking at past 5 years and looking at more than 180 days in all states.
I'm starting with the default and just changing it because I want folks to know you can do all kinds of things. So in this case,
cool.
You start out with 180 days dirt sprints, and that's phenomenal on its own.
That's great.
And as you said, if you want to look at stakes, you could do that as well. Yeah,
that's perfect. And I'm glad you did pull it up that way because that actually I think makes the case better than jumping straight to the one that I was going to, is by just looking at the stakes. which the numbers here are also pretty good. It's just the numbers were better there when you looked at sort of the broader sample. But either way, those are encouraging numbers. And again, you could kind of pull up a couple of different iterations of it, and it's all going to yield really strong across the board win percentage and the money percentage and return on investment. So I like Runaway a lot. Still having fun on the rail is another one who is maybe a bit more under the radar. And I mean, I will have to probably work out a little bit of a trip. For those who don't play the Maryland circuit often, Tim Keefe and Sheldon Russell are very good friends. they do a lot of things together, include some competitive running and Ironman competitions and that sort of thing. And a lot of times I'll look up at a Tim Keefe horse winning at a decent price, and Sheldon will be riding. And so that's just kind of an anecdote, but I do think here, if you look back at this horse, he's been running mile and an eighth, mile and a 16th. The race 4 back there, 7 furlongs, his top career figure at 102 in the Frank Whiteley, by far his best career race. The Maryland Juvenile Futurity before that, another really, really strong race. I think he was just going a little farther than he wanted to go. Again, just if he can work out a trip, I think this is one who's potentially dangerous and been under the radar. And he's also won his only race over and off track. So those are things to consider. And I think he's one that, again, at a decent price is probably going to hit the board. Can he win potentially? But I would definitely put him on your exotic tickets. How about you, Steve?
Again, you guys are finding all the obvious plays. I mean, and even the things that are less than obvious. I thought that Lewisfield, Ellis, I absolutely agree on all fronts. Long Haul Bay should get that good outside trip that you like in this kind of a sitting. And I thought Switzerland, was the other, and Hardwood actually were the other, 2 horses that would probably be B's or C's. But I thought that Long Haul and Lewisfield were the 2 major A's. And when it comes to building the multi-race plays, I'm going to think that we can get through with just those 2. Let's talk about the Sir Barton. And it's one of the strange things, I discussed it with Marty McGee today from the forum. This is a unusual Preakness Day because the Dixie is not preceding the Preakness, and it's very interesting that we've got the 3-year-old back to back. We've got the Sir Barton for the not ready for classic time players, and here it is. And there's actually some interesting horses in here. You do also have to keep tabs on what's going to happen tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but on earlier on the card Saturday when it comes to the Murphy and the cross-entered horses that could, if the Murphy comes off the turf, you got 3s over deuces and the like. The cross-entereds are going to come out. So, in fact, I think Marty actually said today both of the Gary Capuano horses are scratching out of the Sir Barton.
Yeah, those horses are California Night, 3s over deuces, and then Takedown and Whirl and Curl. Really quick, since we are trying to wrap, we did skip a little bit of the sprint. For those folks, our forum, accessible from Stats Racelands, which we'll go over at the end. We'll have all these picks posted as well. My picks, as Steve mentioned, were Lewisfield, Hartwood, Long Haul Bay, and Dan was Long Haul Bay, Switzerland, and Hartwood, so we're very close in the sprint. In the Sir Barton, I think it's interesting. You've got the Baffert really overbet Axeman, and he won one of these really weird restricted races, homebreds or sold for 100,000 or more, and he won like a good thing at 7-5, and they put him at the stake, and he disappointed at 2-5. Came back in an allowance race, scratched out of turf, and he won with a 118, which is like a grade 1 figure, and now Baffert's shipping him here and going 2 turns again with that. Cal X-Man, I believe, won today at Santa Anita or ran second. So he's so-so. It was an allowance race as well. I'm not sold this horse should be the 3 to 5 he's going to be. And I think the pace could be very hot. And the reason I'm going to show this is now true odds again, because when you look at the PPs, you have one opinion of the horses whose wins were only earned going on the lead from start to finish. And that's not what this shows. This shows Axeman in front, but that's not really the way he runs. He ran second. That's based on the California pace. I can argue with this. Doesn't mean I always argue with it, but I do. But on this running style, this tells me what I want to know, because Navy Commander, California Night, Whirlin' Curlin, and even Title Ready, who I'll get to in a second, who shows here as a presser, but he's outside. He's going to have to use some tactical speed. Here he is here, the first call. I think you got a 3 or 4 horse pace duel, and just to cement that fact and how I got to what these analysis I got to in this race based on solely on pace. And again, some effect on scratches, but if Murphy comes off the turf, this race will have the bigger field. California Night went for the lead, couldn't get the lead. That was a mile and an eighth. That doesn't count. He's an early presser horse, early type horse. Navy Commander, 3 around the track. That's a horse that wants to have a lead. Both those before that, the lead. The 11 Title Ready, who I liked a couple races back. Again, early presser. The post really commits him. And I think that sets it up incredibly well for the second choice, the morning line, Pony Up. Pony Up, the Calumet again. Fletcher, Velasquez, second of the Kitten's Jury on turf. But he started out on the dirt, running second to Soutage, who we talked about earlier. Then he won on the grass, tried the Holy Bull, nothing. Went to Jeff Ruby because maybe they thought that turf breeding translated to all weather. He made the lead in between calls and ran good here. And in the Lexington, he rallied from 8th of 10 back, got beat 2.5, was passing horses. But you have to remember, the mile and 16th at Keeneland is the short stretch. With the extra mile and an eighth, he's going to run like this. And this is what I want out of Pony Up. So I'm going with Pony Up on top. Axeman, 3's Over Deuces happens to be my top pick in the Murphy, but I'll take him just as well on the dirt. He is a very nice horse. He fits the restricted condition here. Second to Midnight Poker, couldn't pass. 2 nice races, likes the dirt. Didn't run well in the mud, but he did run well on good, so I don't think that's a problem. So my picks in the Sir Barton are going to be Pony Up, 3 Over Deuces, Axeman, and then just to round out a 4-horse trifecta box, I'm going to go to Forest Fire, who I think has enough tactical speed for Luis Saez to sit second or third here, not get caught up in that duel, and be in the money at 15 to 1.
Yeah, it's like you. I'm going to use Pony Up as well. I think the one other thing, you look at the company lines there, and I mean he's been flattered by some of that recent company. Obviously third to My Boy Jack in the Lexington, who came back and ran obviously credibly in the Derby, and then of course Blended Citizen, 2 back in the Ruby. So yeah, I think Pony Up. This is a good spot for Pony Up, and so. He's a player, and way back when I actually made a future bet on a Bob Baffert horse who was really promising. His name was not Justified, though. It was Axeman. So I'm going to utilize him. But, yeah, more importantly here, in terms of going to my price play, Dream Baby Dream. And so we're pulling up a chart here, 3 races back. At Oaklawn on the 19th of February, and you can see. I mean, I love these charts here, and the fact that we see the circles, because my memory is awful, and so I there's no way I would keep track or remember these things. What that circle means is that horse came back and won next out in a race that had a higher rating than this race, and so that's good news considering he finished in front of that horse. And I remember this race distinctly because I had the runner-up, who New York Central came back to rally and beat in nearing the wire. And then, of course, New York Central came back last week and ran a huge race in the Pathé Mile. And so, again, going back to that race a few back, I mean, steadied on the first turn there. You see that trouble indicator. That's what, anytime you see that little red arrow, it's worth taking a closer look at the race, and that the horse may have, in fact, had some excuses for not running better or not winning. So I think this horse is right there. Additionally, in that race that I mentioned, 3 back, really the horse moved off the rail when he should have probably stayed on the rail that day. And like I said, the eventual winner, New York Central, held the rail and won. What's interesting here is, Alice, you mentioned Title Ready. Santana actually, opts to ride, opts for this horse as opposed to Title Ready, who he was on in the Northern Spurs. So, again, you could read into jockey moves, or you could ignore them. If I like a horse and I see that, especially knowing, with Santana being sort of Steve Asmussen's guy, and likely having the choice of the two, going with Dream Baby Dream, and he goes with that one, that's a good sign for me. So, yeah, I like Dream Baby Dream. I like the price that we're probably going to get. I don't know if we're going to get 8-1. I hope we do. But I do like Dream Baby Dream a lot. And then I'm going to mix, I'm going to, play a couple of tickets with Pony Up and Axeman in some of the other positions. Steve?
Nothing clever. Axeman, Pony Up, Dream Baby Dream is my, and with those scratches, there's not going to be much value wise. Let's take a quick hit at Friday's features. Expect very sloppy conditions for the Black Eyed Susan and the Pimlico Special. You can scratch Midnight Disguise, the Linda Wright with a hoof issue. So take Midnight Disguise out, move everybody in a slot from the 3. They all move in 1. So field of 9 in the Black Eyed Susan tomorrow. And remember, there is the Black Eyed Susan Preakness double, 2-day double.
Well, yeah, just quick to, it's still going to be fun racing. It's going to be extremely wet, as you know, and I almost lost my GPs here for a minute. There you go. My keys to the race are Good One Honey and Indy Union, who come out of the Weber City Miss. Indy Union gets this great jockey change back to Jose Ortiz as well, and they're nice prices here. So I'll just touch on those. Good One Honey, who dominated 2 for 2 now, just improved a ton. Miles 16th at Laurels. This is the 3rd start, 2nd route. Hamilton rides back. Just a nice improving pattern on a young filly. And Indy Union, who rallied from way, way back, 16 back, couldn't beat Honey. The jockey change to Jose Ortiz is going to be whole different, because when he rode her at Belmont, he rode her off the pace. She could turn the tables. They're 5-1 and 10-1 here. So those are my 2 main plays in the race. I'll look at Coach Rock's Red Ruby and Sarah Street for 2nd and 3rd, but I'm going to try and beat them here with both Good One Honey and Indy Union in the Black Eyed Susan. Dan?
Yeah, I like Red Ruby. She's got some tactical speed, and I think the race should set up nicely behind the pace of Good One Honey. I think CS in Charge and Sarah Street will obviously have some pace too, and so I just think, if the track is playing fairly, I mean, I think she'll have a nice, she'll really trip into a nice race, and so Red Ruby, and we're on Sarah Street now, just again to show you another one of the pace players in here. With Red Ruby, I thought maybe regressed slightly last out as the favorite off of that big race 2 back. And so, I just think Red Ruby's coming into a big race. Did a little trainer research here, which we don't have to pull up, but essentially looking at Paco Lopez for Kellen Gorder, and the stats are extremely good. It's 17 starts, pretty much more than half of those in the money, and a handful of wins, strong ROI. And then Coach Rocks is the other one, coming back off a 7th place finish in the Oaks. I didn't really love Coach Rocks going into the Oaks, and really she didn't have too many excuses, but I just, given what she's done, I mean, class wise, I mean, she's certainly a little more accomplished than the rest of these. And then I also did a little search on Dale Romans using Stats Race Lens, looking at over the past 3 years, coming back in 2 weeks in stakes, and the numbers were okay. It wasn't many times that he's done it. It was only 4 starts, and there were 3 in the money finishes and a win. But that win notably was with Go Maggie Go in the Black Eyed Susan Stakes a couple of years ago, after she ran in the Kentucky Oaks. So you got sort of a similar, kind of pattern there, which is worth considering. And again, given the fact that Coach Rox has already done it in terms of winning a big race already this year, I think she's legit. So and there's the Go Maggie Go race that we just referenced a couple of years ago, Black Eyed Susan Stakes. So that's all I've got for that one. Steve?
Good one, honey. It makes tremendous sense. The horse that I find fun and intriguing as a first Lasix is that Stakes on a Plane. You mentioned Sheldon Russell earlier, and she was kind of chasing in the Weber City Miss, and the full mile and an eighth in here. I look back to that maiden race when she was taken from Arnaud Delacour. There's a little bit of a progressive line from her, and she happens to run very well over the sealed slop at Laurel. And she's my cockamamie horse to throw in, because the logicals are just all too logical here. We need a little something to maybe juice things up a tiny bit, and I like the fact that she's stepped forward just a tiny bit. One of those horses you throw in at the bottom of your exotics. And the Pimlico Special. We've got Irish War Cry, who needs to right the ship. We've got the pair of Pletcher players. Not sure if both are going, by the way. Todd was with me on Tuesday and was not guaranteeing that both would run. But it's still a good group. And, of course, you've got the presence of Something Awesome for Andy Stronach and Jose Corrales. It's an interesting group for the Pimlico Special, no matter who ends up lining up.
Well, I hope Pletcher keeps one liner in, because he might be equivalent of best bet of the day for me, because I love the race at Keeneland, love the pattern. Last year, of course, win-win, Southwest, Derby Trail, injured, knocked out, came back, third sprint route pattern. Everything's fantastic here. Ortiz is getting off, Sayas getting on. That doesn't matter to me. Love the pattern for improvement. He's on a 103 to 112, back past the 116 for last year, even though Something Awesome got a 116 last out. Certainly a contender. So those would be my top two in the race, would be One Liner and Something Awesome. And then for exactas and trifectas, I'll use two horses. I'll use Discreet Lover, who won the Excelsior at 7 to 1, 114 should not be 20 to 1. Looking for the price we talked about earlier on the show, Steve, the horse that can blow it up if you're going to take the shot. And the 7, the Fleet Willie, who won the Richard Small at 9 furlongs back here, and wasn't too bad. Pressed, tried to make a run at Something Awesome. That's the leader in the Something Awesome race, got tired. Different tactics here, back to these kind of tactics like the Small. Certainly can't knock that. So One Liner is my win bet. One Liner and Something Awesome over. One Liner, Something Awesome, Discreet Lover, and Fleet Willie for the exactas and tries in the Pimlico Special.
Now by all rights, they should be adjusting the name. That's the Dickie Small, the great Dickie Small trainer of Broadway.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Ellis, I haven't spent as much time on this race, but the one horse, that we're on right now with Fleet Willie, I think is super interesting. If he doesn't lose too much in an early battle with hedge fund, I think he could be, I think he could last a long time. And he loves an off track. As you can see right there. So if it pours, as it probably will, he's one to keep an eye on, and he'll get overlooked. I think he'll get a really nice price on him.
Yeah. What else can we say? Final thoughts, Ellis.
It's going to be a great weekend. Of course, we have to just watch the scratches and the weather, but no matter what, they're going to run around the track, and there'll be some nice prices at the end of the day, and I hope we all cash a couple of them.
Absolutely. Dan Torshman, what's going on while we got you? What is going on ABR-wise and also EquestriCon-wise?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, so we actually, on the ABR side, just yesterday, we threw a really, really fun party at the Mount Washington Tavern. It was our fifth year doing it. It benefits the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. We had a really nice event. It looks like we raised a little over $5,000 for the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, and it brought out a ton of people, get jockeys and some trainers and owners. We had Jack Wolf there. It was representing Team Justify last night. So that was fun, and basically we'll be around the track from now till they turn the lights out Saturday night. Covering the race and the scene around here from every angle. And you could check out everything we've got on americasbestracing.net, and if you follow on Twitter at ABR Live. And then on EquestriaCon, we're getting closer day by day. Monday and Tuesday of Breeders' Cup week. For anyone who hasn't checked out the schedule yet, we have a lot of great panels scheduled, a lot of big appearances, and with it being lined up with Breeders' Cup this year. All the major personalities, all the trainers coming in for Breeders' Cup, all the owners coming in for Breeders' Cup, they're all going to be at EquestriaCon. And so if you, whether you're a casual fan, whether you're heavily involved in racing, if you want to schmooze, you want to network, you want to just have some fun and enjoy racing with other people who love racing, check out equestriacon.com. So we're definitely pumped for to really get into the thick of it over the next few months.
Outstanding. Want to thank everybody, of course, at the Stats Race Lens development team. You should be following Stats Race Lens on your Twitter machine. Follow Uber Capper. Follow the Anonymous Man. You can follow me too, Steve_Byk. Back with the weekend preview at the races tomorrow morning, 9 to noon. If you missed today, Leon Blushewitz we had quite a fun time. We'll have Rich Figliori and Zoe Cadman tomorrow live, and much, much more. If we'll put the page back up, let everybody, there it is. Beautiful. Stats Race Lens. Buy a month, get a quarter. SRLM 129F. SRLM 129F. Jot it down. If you haven't subscribed, if you aren't using, this is a tremendous offer, tremendous deal. It's good till the end of the month, and obviously it'll take you right into the summer, right into Del Mar and Saratoga. That's the True Odds package, 20% off all cards and subscriptions, and that's for anybody. And we hope that you have a great weekend. Whatever happens weather-wise, we'll deal with it, and looking forward. Let them get around safe. We will talk to you. I think our next will be Belmont week, right? Thursday Belmont week.
3 weeks. 3 weeks from now.
3 weeks from tonight. We'll be live. We'll come to you live from King Umberto's. Maybe. That's a possibility. Have a great Preakness weekend, everybody. Hi Ho Pimlico. Talk to you from New York in 3 weeks.